I understand fair value gaps, but I'm struggling on the inverse side of it.
Okay, this might sound confusing, so listen carefully. We know that when we see a bearish fair value gap, we want to look for sells, and when we see a bullish fair value gap, we want to look for buys. But when it comes to inverse fair value gaps, when we see a bearish fair value gap, we actually want to look for buys, and when we see a bullish fair value gaps, we actually want to look for sells. To mark out inverse fair value gaps, we're going to do it the exact same way as normal fair value gaps. So for a bearish fair value gap, we're going to be doing it from the bottom of the first candle to the top of the third candle. But for a bullish fair value gap, we're going to be doing it from the top of the first candle to the bottom of the third candle. Okay, so here we can see a bearish fair value gap. We know it's a bearish fair value gap because it's the bottom of the first candle to the top of the third candle. But what do you notice happened to this bearish fair value gap?
It got disrespected.
It got disrespected, right? So when a fair value gap gets disrespected, meaning a candle closure through it, that is when it turns into an inverse fair value gap. So now this bearish normal fair value gap has turned into a bullish inverse fair value gap, meaning now if price was to come and tap back into this zone, we expect price to then push higher. And because price chases two things, liquidity and imbalances, after this bearish fair value gap got disrespected and then tapped into the bullish inverse, what do you think it's going to go and chase?
High side liquidity.
Perfect. Hopefully you've now understood inverse fair value gaps. Remember, we can use disrespected fair value gaps to determine price direction because we know that when fair value gaps get disrespected, price likes to chase opposing liquidity.